Hey y'all, welcome back to another Timepieces for Tomorrow video. And before we continue, well, what's on the wrist, man? I got the Tudor Black Bay Chrono Reverse Panda, or the Tudor Black Bay Chrono Inverted Panda. So it's got the black primary dial and the whitish silver subdials. So within this video, I want to provide advice for purchasing your first luxury wristwatch. And a quick background on myself. I've been involved as a wristwatch collector for over 30 years. I feel that I may know a little bit about it, but what I do know is that I will share with you some of the lessons that I've learned throughout the wristwatch collecting journey. So before you decide to purchase your first luxury wristwatch, something that I encourage everyone to do, leading up to that point, whether it's every day or every week or every month, just set some money aside and continue to do that, because a wristwatch is not cheap. You don't want to make a compromise. So it's something you definitely want to plan for in advance. If you've got a business and your business does well, set aside some more money and get to the point to where you have more than enough with cash so that when you're ready to make that first luxury wristwatch purchase, that you don't have to think about the money. I mean, you got the money and you're just purchasing the wristwatch that you want. So a few things to avoid. Never go to an authorized dealer and not know what you want. And the reason I say that, a lot of authorized dealers are good, but a lot of times if you walk in there and you don't know what you're after, they can steer you towards something, and what they steer you towards may be a piece that they're just trying to sell. Maybe it's a wristwatch brand and reference that's been a tough sell. Maybe it's a good brand, but maybe it's a less desirable reference, and they're just trying to sell something because they realize that this will be your first wristwatch that other people with more wristwatch collecting knowledge would pass up. So they're trying to sell something they couldn't sell to other people. Also, be aware of your wrist size. I'm a 7.5-inch wrist. Go into some authorized dealers while you're trying to figure out what you want. Try on different wristwatch sizes. For most men, the wristwatch size currently, in today's standards, 2022, probably between 39 millimeters and 42 millimeters. Unless you've got a really small wrist or a really large wrist, 39 to 42 millimeters is probably the perfect range. And you might be able to go up as high as 44. What you don't want for your first wristwatch is something that's too big or too small. You also don't want something that is not water resistant. Well, maybe you do. So you got to ask yourself, is this something that I'm only going to wear with a suit and a dress shirt? Or is this something that I may go out and play golf with? I may go out and jump in the pool with it. Because if you plan on getting it wet, you need to limit your search to sports watches with screw-down crowns. And a couple of examples of that would be an Omega Seamaster Professional 300M. Another example would be a Rolex Submariner. Another example could be a Tudor Black Bay 58. Or even the Tudor Chrono, because this has screw-down pushers. Now typically, and that's something else to be aware of, with chronographs, if they don't have screw-down pushers and stated water resistance, then they're probably, even though they may look like a sports watch, stainless steel case, stainless steel bracelet, they wouldn't be something you would want to swim with. Prime example of that would be the Omega Speedmaster Man on the Moon watch with a Hazelite crystal. It does not have screw-down pushers. So, it's a watch that you could wear and enjoy, but you wouldn't want to get it wet. You wouldn't want to take it in the water swimming. So those are a few things to be aware of. The other thing is what's your budget? With your first luxury wristwatch purchase, you don't want to cheapen up. I mean, you don't want to go for something crazy expensive. You don't want to go for something that's the most entry level. You just need to go where you're comfortable. And also ask yourself, is this a wristwatch that you will probably keep forever? Or is it, maybe it's a one and done. Maybe it's the only wristwatch you ever plan to purchase. Now, if that's your mindset at the time of purchasing it, you may be 100% convinced that's reality. But what you'll probably find, and not everybody, some people just get one watch and that's all they ever want. But you'll probably be like a lot of wristwatch people that get the wristwatch bug and then they want to add to their collection. So what I would do, and keep in mind, wristwatches over time, especially Rolex, Omega, Breitling, Patek Philippe, etc., those tend to appreciate in value because those brands typically, not necessarily every year, but every few years or so, they increase the MSRP for the various references, meaning that the manufacturer's suggested retail price increases, so therefore that increases the value of could increase the value of the watch going forward. So for example, in my case, I've got a Rolex Submariner. I purchased that back in 2013. I could sell it, and I never would, but I could sell that piece now easily for probably more than double in used condition, for more than double what I paid for it new, a lot more than double what I paid for it new. So, be aware of that when you're shopping for your first luxury wristwatch. Is it something that historically, go to websites like chrono24.com and search for the various brands and references. And by the way, reference is just a fancy way of saying model. When you're dealing with cars, you've got the brand and then you've got the model. And then in the wristwatch world, you've got the manufacturer. So for example, Rolex, and then the reference, Submariner 114060, which means Submariner without a date with a ceramic bezel. So, just a few things to be aware of there. So is it something that if you do want it to be a one and done, and you, at least at this point in time, you have no intentions of adding other wristwatches, then you probably want to go with something that's wear anywhere. Something like again, depending upon your budget, you could go anywhere. I would recommend the first sports watch, depending upon your budget. You could look at Tudor, which is Rolex's sister brand. The Tudor Black Bay 58. Check out my videos of that. Great piece. Looks very close to a vintage, old school Submariner with new technology. Somewhat affordable for a luxury wristwatch. You could also look at the Omega Seamaster 300M, highly water resistant. Connection with James Bond, the actor, the spy in a bunch of movies. You know who James Bond is. So you've got that connection there. Very cool wristwatch. Rolex Submariner also has a James Bond connection. Also highly water resistant. Iconic, just like the Seamaster. Something that's probably never going to go out of style. It'll probably continue to go up in value. That's another good option. If you're looking for other brands, you could look at Breitling. The Breitling Super Ocean Heritage 2 is an awesome, highly water resistant watch. It's something that doesn't have the name recognition yet of the Rolex Submariner or the Omega Seamaster, but it's something that I feel could become a future classic, just like the Tudor Black Bay 58 that I previously mentioned. So, those are some sports watches that you could confidently consider, and they should be easy to find, and they're something that'll they'll probably continue to be desirable. And it's, there's no corners cut there. Now, if you're buying your first luxury wristwatch and you're very financially successful, you could look at some of the Holy Trinity brands, such as Audemars Piguet, Vacheron Constantin, and Patek Philippe. They've got sports watches. Keep in mind, though, the sports watches are going to be a lot more expensive, and they're going to be a lot more delicate. As far as in wristwatch terminology, what people would often refer to as a tool watch, your best examples of luxury tool watches would be the Rolex Submariner and the Omega Seamaster 300M. I mean, both of those are built like a tank. I own both of those. I mean, they can take a beating. I swim with them. I shower with them. I take them in hot tubs. Probably you're not supposed to take it in a hot tub, but I do anyway. Highly water resistant. I haven't had a problem with any of them. Now, if you're looking for something, if you're not just going for a one and done, maybe you want to purchase a dress watch first. Now, at the time of filming this video, January of 2022, dress watches on a leather strap aren't as popular as they used to be. But if that's what you want, something to just wear with a dress shirt and a suit, you could get a really nice dress watch on the leather strap. I would stick with a dress watch probably 39 or 40 millimeters. And you can go basic, just a wristwatch with a date. You could go for some that have moon phase complication. You could go with some that have small seconds instead of the large hand that sweeps around. Whatever you do, though, stay away from quartz. You want to stick with automatic watches or manual wind watches. You want the real deal. You don't want a quartz watch. Now, there are some people that like quartz wristwatches, but I would stick with an automatic or a manual wind. Manual wind meaning that you have to wind it. It doesn't recharge itself while you're wearing it on your wrist and moving your wrist around. So either of those. Now, some dress wristwatches that come to mind, you've got Jaeger LeCoultre, which is, it looks like it's spelled like Jaeger LeCoultre. They had the Reverso, which is kind of a rectangular shaped wristwatch, which is highly desirable. They also have a circular wristwatch, which is called the Master Control. Those would be two great wristwatches to look at. Jaeger LeCoultre is a high horology movement manufacturer, but they also make incredible wristwatches, and they test the movements within those watches for 1,000 hours. That's what they call their 1,000 hours Master Control. So they're very high-end dress wristwatches. And again, not to the caliber of Audemars Piguet, Patek Philippe, or Vacheron Constantin. I mean, if you've got that budget, you can look at them. They've got a lot of phenomenal dress watches of much greater price. And on the lower end, you know, if you want a dress watch that's on a leather strap, that's not super expensive. I mean, there's a ton of brands out there. I mean, one of them that comes to mind is Cartier. You know, something that you wouldn't, you wouldn't get wet. I mean, it's a dress watch on a leather strap, but as far as dress watches are concerned, they have a very good history. And that's the other thing. When you're shopping for your first luxury wristwatch, be aware of the brands. There's a lot of brands that'll pop up. You could be in an authorized dealer that sells multiple wristwatch brands, and there could be this brand you've never heard of, but it seems like a good deal, and it looks just as good as some of the other ones, and it's a little bit less expensive. You got to be careful about that. There's a lot of brands that pop up, and they create a fake history, and they're not good purchases. I mean, I'm not saying you have to be investing in wristwatches, but especially if it's your first luxury wristwatch, you probably want to go after something that will likely continue to appreciate in value. You know, should that be the only luxury wristwatch that you purchase, you would probably want to purchase something that would probably be able to increase in value over time. So be very careful about what you're purchasing. Make sure that it's a brand that has a true and long duration history. I mean, when you're dealing with Breitling, Rolex, Omega, any of the brands I just mentioned, I mean, they've got rich history, and it goes way back. So, I mean, you just need to be careful, and you don't want to purchase on impulse. You know, you want to go out and you want to try on various wristwatches, dress watches, sports watches from all different brands, and really find the particular size that fits you the best. You know, don't have somebody say, "Oh, you need a 39 millimeter, or you need a 44 millimeter." You know, you want to put on your wrist and see what's the best. But I'm going to tell you, probably with 80% certainty, you're probably going to find that 40 millimeters is probably perfect. 40 millimeters is probably perfect for most anyone. You know, you don't want something too small. In the past, 36 millimeter used to be the standard for men, your Rolex Datejust. And that's another good watch, by the way, the Datejust. And they have it in 41 millimeters now. But 36 millimeter Datejust rather, kind of used to be the standard dress sports watch size for men. But now, again, you know, like I'm saying, you know, between 39 millimeters and on the larger size 42 millimeters, that's kind of the typical range that most men would find would fit their wrist the best. Once you go above 42, and once you go to 44, things start to really look big. And once you go below 39, things typically start to look small. But again, everybody's got a different wrist size, so you may have a very small wrist or a very large wrist, so none of this is written in stone. I'm just talking about, you know, the majority of people that I know, typically around 40 millimeters is typically the sweet spot for the size of the watch, whether it's a dress watch or a sports watch. Now, a sports watch, you can go larger. With a dress watch, I would not get a dress watch over 40 millimeters. I think for a dress watch, 39 or 40, and at least for me, that's it. You know, I don't want a dress watch of a different size. But every watch wears differently. Keep in mind something as simple as the dial color. This wristwatch, this Tudor Reverse Panda that I've got on my wrist, just because it's got a primary black dial instead of a primary white dial, This wristwatch also comes in a white dial, where the primary dial is white and the sub dials are black. Just because of the dial color, the primary dial color being white, it has the illusion of being a larger wristwatch. So notice that when you're looking at two of the same wristwatches in an authorized dealer. One of them has a white dial, one has a black dial. Put them on your wrist, and it's a visual trick, but you're going to find that the white colored dial appears to be larger. So, just another thing to be aware of. And then also bezel material. A lot of and this particular wristwatch has an aluminum bezel insert. So it's something that could easily scratch, not easily, but it can scratch. It'll probably fade over time. It's actually a desirable characteristic among collectors because it develops what's called patina. Aluminum bezel can scratch and it can fade, but that's a desirable characteristic in the eyes of most collectors. Now, a lot of your wristwatches now, your current reference Omega Seamaster 300M, your current reference Rolex Submariner, those are going to have ceramic bezels. So that's something that probably won't fade. It probably won't crack. It'll probably look just as good 20 years from now as it did brand new. So it's just a different, different bezel material. So keep in mind, the bezel material that's used, because it's all different. And again, chemicals, like if I swim in a pool with this with chlorine over time could change the color of this black aluminum bezel insert. It could give it a faded look, which can be desirable. So just keep that in mind. And if a wristwatch does not have if you're not looking at a sports watch with a ceramic or aluminum bezel, prime example of one would be a Rolex Explorer 1. It's just got kind of a domed stainless steel bezel, but that's something, and the same with the Rolex Milgauss, those are things that they can become what's referred to as scratch magnets. So if you don't, and a lot of people don't mind scratches, I don't mind scratches, but if you're wearing something that does not have a bezel that's made out of ceramic or aluminum, and it's just stainless steel, or if it's a dress watch, precious metals, that's probably going to show scratches a lot more. So if scratches bother you, that's something to be aware of when you're hunting for your first luxury wristwatch. If you're going with dress watches, don't just think about, well, if you're going with a dress watch, obviously you can't swim with it, but also take in mind that wristwatch is more delicate. It's probably going to show scratches a lot more, and if that's something that bothers you, it's something that you may want to consider. My best advice for your first luxury wristwatch is a stainless steel sports watch. And again, depending upon your budget, the ones that I would recommend on the lower end would be the Tudor Black Bay 58, phenomenal wristwatch, 39 millimeters, fits great, feels just as good in my opinion as a Rolex. Tudor is Rolex's sister brand, by the way, and it's a solid wristwatch. It doesn't have the heritage that Rolex Submariner has, but it feels great, it looks great, and in my opinion, it's probably going to become a future classic. The same goes for the Breitling Super Ocean Heritage 2. Very nice wristwatch. It comes in a lot of different sizes. With it, you would want to get the 42 millimeter because it goes all the way, I think, up to 46. I think they've got a 44 and a 46. But the 42 is great. It's a phenomenal wristwatch. If you get it on the shark mesh bracelet. It's a very comfortable, very unique looking bracelet. And then, of course, it goes without saying the Omega Seamaster 300M or the Rolex Submariner, both iconic, probably will never go out of style, both highly water resistant. All four of those I just mentioned are highly water resistant, but you couldn't go wrong with any of those stainless steel sports watches. They're all well known. They come from great manufacturers. They can be expensive, but it's something where price will likely continue to go up over time. So, confidently with those, obviously the Rolex Submariner and the Omega Seamaster 300M being the top two, I wouldn't have any hesitation about, if I was going to do a one and done, I wouldn't feel bad about that being my only wristwatch. Any of those. I mean, they're all great, and they're not. There's so many wristwatches out there. And I'm not saying those are the only four you should look at, but then again, I am saying those are the only four you should look at, especially if you're planning on getting one watch and that being it. And the thing about those wristwatches, all the four that I just mentioned, is that they're all timeless. They're all simple. You know, there's you don't look at them, they don't have precious metals that stand out. I mean, the one thing you don't want to do is, especially if you're buying your one and done luxury wristwatch, it's the first and only, you don't want to get a precious metals piece, because there's going to be certain situations where you probably wouldn't feel comfortable wearing a yellow gold or white gold piece. You know, maybe you travel and you don't want to be seen with a wristwatch that would draw attention, that sort of thing. If you get precious metals pieces, get those later. You know, if you're only planning to get one wristwatch, or this is your first luxury wristwatch purchase, stay away from precious metals. Just get the get the stainless steel sports watch. But if you're doing a one and done and you don't want a sports watch, it's strictly going to be worn with a suit in dry conditions, then you may want to get a dress watch that's made out of precious metals. You know, depending upon what your budget is. So, but you know, in all sincerity, having learned what I learned, and my first real wristwatch was the Omega Seamaster 300M Blue Wave dial, pre-coaxial, and it's still great. Haven't even serviced it. I've had it for over 20 years, and it still runs like a champ. Omega makes a great watch. So does Rolex and Breitling and Tudor. So you know, you can't go wrong with any of those. But keep in mind, when you are searching for your first luxury wristwatch, try it on. Make sure it fits your wrist. Don't buy something just because you feel like it's what other people think that they should see you wearing. Buy what you want. Buy what is comfortable. Something it just kind of disappears on your wrist. You forget you're wearing it. It's so comfortable. You know, just get what fits you, but don't be fooled by the brand. Just because it's a big brand, a lot of these brands, now Rolex not so much. Most everything that Rolex releases, most all the Rolex references are highly desirable. That's not necessarily the case with Omega, and even more so with Breitling, and even more so with Tudor. You know, unless you're dealing with Rolex only, those other brands, you got to be very cautious about the reference or the model of wristwatch that you're shopping for, because they have so many that some of them aren't desirable. You want to be certain that you're getting a piece that is desirable then, has been desirable in the past, and probably will continue to be desirable going forward. Because you don't want to get your first luxury wristwatch and then be like, well, God, you know, I'm kind of tired of wearing this. You know, I want something different. You don't want to get your first luxury wristwatch and not be able to sell or trade because it's undesirable. So keep all of this in mind, and please ask questions below. Again, I don't claim to be an expert. Again, I've been collecting wristwatches for over 30 years. I'm highly passionate about it. I'm more than happy to share any of the knowledge that may benefit you. So if you have any questions, comment below, and if it's a really good question, I'll try to respond in the form of a video here on Irish Guys Adventure channel, my Timepieces for Tomorrow video. So subscribe to my channel and ring that bell icon to be notified whenever I post another video, and check out my Timepieces for Tomorrow video playlist, or you can just go to timepiecesfortomorrow.com and you can find all my previously recorded Timepieces for Tomorrow live shows, as well as Timepieces for Tomorrow videos. And if you're looking for Timepieces for Tomorrow merch, like this sweatshirt, t-shirts, coffee mugs, pint glasses, and more, look down below. And most importantly, don't make a rush decision. And just a few key takeaways here. Don't make a rush decision. Don't buy what you think others would want you to buy. Buy what you want. Before you even start the hunt, make sure that you have an abundance of money saved. So, this is something that you know what your budget is. It's your first luxury wristwatch. Then it's just a matter of shopping around, trying them on, finding what fits you best. And again, don't get sold by anyone, whether it's an authorized dealer, a friend, family member, whatever. Don't let anyone sell you. Get what you want and what feels comfortable on your wrist, and you would feel confident wearing forever if it's your only wristwatch, or maybe it's just the first of many. So I hope this video helped, and y'all have a good day. Best of luck with your luxury wristwatch hunt. Hey y'all, Captain Irix Guy here. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to subscribe. It's youtube.com/Irix Guy. And ring that bell icon when you do to be notified whenever I post another video. Thanks for your viewership, and y'all have a good day.